as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
No, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself. I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin. Would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
It sure is. And to all the mothers out there, we wish you a happy Mother's Day and welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. We are live, of course, facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, youtube.com, the Hockey Podcast, where you can also subscribe, where we are currently at the Martin Straka of subscribers.
That's obscure.
Really?
A little bit.
Oh my gosh, Martin Straka. Martin Straka.
I mean, it's not Alex Stoyanov, but it's.
I think it's a great poll.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I got you back, Kev.
Thank you. And of course, you can subscribe to the audio as soon, shortly after this is done. I have to talk about Wednesday. So we have of course, the puck in the zone defensive way to end the game. We strategized that, and of course, the guy that usually drives the bus is off. So what happens? It actually went pretty good. The game plan went pretty solid.
There was some rough patches in the road. Let's just say.
I feel like we were Patrick Stefan with an open net a little bit.
yes.
No, but you missed it at first, and then you actually did hit it. It did not Alex Hemsky back.
No. I don't think we wrecked the show entirely. We
No.
put a couple of scratches though.
Yeah, maybe.
we got it from point A to point B.
Yeah.
We may have hit point C and point D and point F along the way, but
don't ask how, they ask how many.
Exactly. How are things? What's going on?
I said offline. We're here in Calgary. We're enjoying another great spring day here in Calgary. It's May the 9th, and we're getting some snow. So
it's just incredible, man.
Pretty on par for May right now, though. Honestly, until May long happens, I am always expecting a little bit of snow, and it kind of really sucks just with these new restrictions coming in on Monday that we can't really go out and do anything. It just puts a little gloom over us. So hopefully our podcast today can bring some light to those of you who are struggling with all this stuff.
Yeah, it's just it's another kind of cloudy, looks like it's trying to rain type of day in northwestern BC. Pretty standard for us here too.
Yeah. Kudos to Alberta, by the way. I think, what is it now? 600,000 or how many Albertans have registered to get a vaccination here?
Oh, since they opened it up to all us crazy millennials, a lot.
Yeah,
I've already got mine. Heidi is due on getting her first shot on Tuesday, and then Dev, you said you got you signed up as well.
Yep, on the 28th, I'll be getting mine first shot.
Yep.
And I got mine on Thursday, and basically by, I would say, yesterday afternoon, evening, it was pretty well. Any lingering side effects were gone after a couple days.
Yeah, I'm getting mine on Thursday as well. So soon I will have a microchip in me.
2.5, the 2.5 G.
Yeah. Yes. Kevel 2.5 G. We got lots to get into. We we had a night last night that Oiler fans were rejoicing, Canuck fans were growling, emotionally drained, like just frustrated. Connor McDavid got 100 points, reached his 100th point in his 53rd game of the season. It's an impressive run. Whether this is like historic as much as it was used last night, I guess we'll discuss and figure out. It is an impressive feat, no doubt about that. We'll start with this one with Devin. Your thoughts last night, Connor McDavid getting 100 points. Big deal to you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, take the Oiler aspect out of it. We're just talking about a singular player, one that we know will be milestones throughout his entire career, and this is just one along the way that is very, very. I think it's important. To Canucks fans, it's going to suck seeing his 100th point over and over and over again against their favorite team. But you just once again take the Oiler aspect out of it. Appreciate what has happened here because it is a big deal. I believe the stat was ninth person to do it within ninth fastest to do it with the amount of games that he's played. So I'm happy for him. Yes, as an Oilers not hater but disliker, if you will. It sucks, but good on Connor McDavid. I'm happy for him.
Tyler?
Well, for me, it's I don't like being petty very much, but I was into the darkness there last night with others about the pettiness. The accomplishment itself is great and impressive, and I'm happy for Connor as well. I basically by the second admission though, I couldn't even watch the coverage. Like they're only talking about one thing. Right. Like, and I know it's okay. It's the big story. It's just because it's a national broadcast doesn't mean we're allocating 50%, airtime to the Canucks and 50% airtime to the Oilers. I don't have that expectation, but it's not a new record that was set. It is impressive. Devin mentioned, Canuck fans seeing the highlights over and over again. I actually don't think that's going to be a really big deal. By the time we're on to next year, there'll be new things to talk about, but yeah, for a salty Canuck fan that's been following the team for a long, long time, and Gretzky had goals 500 and 802 against the Canucks, and here's another great player, and getting a significant milestone, if you will, against the Canucks, and it's just more salt in the wound, I guess, for people in a season that's been pretty poor.
Gretzky's first goal was against the Canucks as well.
That's right. Yep.
And that's where I'm coming from. Like I already have to watch all those stupid highlights of Gretzky scoring against the Canucks because it was like, yeah, he had a few milestones against them, and now I have to deal with this. I was not happy last night, and I was the same. It was petty, it was stupid, but hockey is irrational and emotional like that at times, and that's what makes fandom. When you do it right, that's what makes fandom good.
I mean, I thought it got a little bit far with the graphic there, counting down the.
Yeah.
Guys, this isn't Rogers Oilers hockey here. This is hockey night. Like, calm down here.
Okay, but just to play devil's advocate here from the moment, what from the Canucks perspective, what is like if you're watching this on a national stage, what stories are there for the Canucks to really to bring to light?
Niels Hoglander tied for 5-on-5 points with Bo Horvat for the lead of the team. That's a great story. It's not McDavid getting 100 points, but there's still stories there. You can still talk about what this team's gone through. The fact that you've got someone like Tyler Graovac who's going out there and almost like putting his best foot forwards for a role on the team next year. You've got, like I said, Niels Hoglander. Jack Rathbone scored his first goal last game. Mm-hmm. We've got. I honestly think there's other stories to tell. Yes, the main story you do tell is McDavid, but the complete lack of anything else just showed that all they wanted to do was talk McDavid. And like I get it, and your devil's advocate question, Kevin, is correct. but you still have to start, like, it's a national broadcast. This isn't Oilers hockey where you've got Jim Principe in a wig and you've got the Homer the hometown broadcast being that. No, you should be treating this like any other game, just telling the story of him getting 100 points, but you still need to tell the other stories because there are other good stories to talk about. You can even talk about Travis Green with the Rod Brind'Amour. They did a little bit, but not much.
Yeah, and there were, Zach McEwen was suspended for his run-in with Darnell Nurse the previous game, and this game
Tyler pulling a Devin
last night was a 10 or something, and I could say, like, what do you mean?
Well, you froze for a second.
Yeah.
Oh, everybody else was freezing here too. Okay, I don't know if you caught all that. The game was actually a close game too. That was the other thing, but you wouldn't have known it unless you looked at the score bug, right? Like if it was 6-1 Edmonton or something, and they wanted to only talk about McDavid, I think we could probably understand that a little bit easier. But it was actually a tight, competitive game, and it's just, boy, when they get on a storyline, guys, they don't get off that thing no matter what. Come hell or high water, this is the story we're going to push.
18-year-old Sam Bennett.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot that goes on and on.
Yeah.
Eddie Lack's mom.
Eddie Lack's mom. Same thing. Yep.
Yeah, I remember years ago before the Rogers takeover of hockey, they had Rick and Kelly doing a Saturday game. I think it was Detroit and the Canucks, and they just never stopped talking about Pavel Datsyuk. Like they must have mentioned Datsyuk like 100 times in the broadcast. Like, well, I guess that was in the production meeting before the show that we were going to make Datsyuk the storyline tonight.
I feel like Devin has something to say.
Well, I completely understand where you guys are coming from. Yes, as a fan of the other team or wanting to have some sort of to just even talk between the two teams, this is something historic. It is historic, period, right? And it is a big story. And if the Canucks were actually like within, I know they're technically within the race still to go in the playoffs, but realistically, the Canucks are out. So like I would want them to give the justice that is deserved of it. And
they did that. They went 6 times hard on it. Like, geez.
Well, but at the same time, like, when is going to happen again? Is it going to happen again? With McDavid, maybe, but it probably won't happen again, realistically, because the 82 game season, which is a normal season, is too long of a sprint to do something like that, right? So I completely understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I mean, I didn't watch the broadcast, so I really don't know how bad it was. But it was, I don't know. You just got to give the justice that it deserves.
It was probably one of Hockey Night's. It was certainly overall one of Hockey Night's most controversial broadcasts overall, but it beside the point. But I mean, I can see why also from a Canucks perspective, this was very frustrating. But this hasn't been done in so long either. That's the other thing. I don't like this. Like that's the other side of it. And I guess if I'm not going to sit here and be kumbaya for Oiler fans necessarily, but for Oiler fans, this has got to be a pretty special moment too. But I get it. It got a little bit too much. They interviewed him after. I mean, they were interviewing the Canuck players after. Someone asked Thatcher Demko, would you appreciate this? It's like, no. Does Glenn Hanlon appreciate that Wayne Gretzky scored his first goal on him? No. Like, it's just, there is a part where this gets a little bit too much too, but
that sounds like a non-athlete that asked that question.
Probably, yeah, or someone probably in Edmonton that would have asked that question.
Yeah.
So, so I guess where are we with the Oilers now? They've clinched second place. We'll get to Devin's North, the North in Toronto.
Yeah.
But where are we with the Oilers? Thursday, Mikko Koskinen went in, could not make a save. And literally, you say that with hyperbole and metaphorically, but he literally could not make a save on Thursday. But where are we with the Oilers? Are they a threat to Toronto? Are we still at wait and see? Where are we with the Oilers?
If they get the goaltending, they're gonna be pushing. Yeah, they'll get through the first round, and then they'll face off against whoever in the second round and battle to see if they can make it to the conference finals. But for me, it all comes down to their goaltending. Can Mike Smith keep this up? Because they ain't playing Koskinen.
No. They're playing Stalock before Koskinen. Hot take.
Okay, yeah.
What about that?
Yeah, no, I with Sean, really, goaltending really is the thing. I think we've seen the Oilers this year demonstrate an ability to close out games and hold on to leads. So as long as they can carry that forward into the playoffs, they should be fine, at least to get through the first round. I mean, everybody wants to see that Toronto-Edmonton series at this point now, and I think the Oilers can keep up. But if I had to pick one or the other, I'd still give the edge to the Leafs by a small margin. Just a little deeper, that team, I think.
But again, they come down to goaltending as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the depth on the Leafs is way better than the Oilers. Every single team, it comes down to goaltending, especially in the playoffs for sure. But as far as if you're going down the depth chart of the Leafs or Edmonton Oilers, I'm sure 9 times out of 10 you'll pick Toronto out of that. But I was listening to. As far as goaltending goes, I was listening to Kevin Woodley this week, Sean's favorite goaltender guru, and he's a very smart man. So if you haven't checked him out yet, check him out. We've had him on the podcast before, but he was talking about Mike Smith and how he has trended this year. And Kevin Woodley said that he wouldn't be surprised if Edmonton brings him back for another 2 years, just from the way that he is playing. So. If Mike Smith can do what Mike Smith does in the playoffs, then they have a really good chance. But I think if it really comes down to it in a 7-game series against Toronto, I think Toronto has them.
I would tend to agree. I don't know what to make of the Jets. I mean, they the Canadians collapse. Can be attributed to COVID. What happened with the Canucks can certainly be attributed to the COVID, but the Jets have not had a COVID issue, and they've lost 8 in a row. I don't know what's going on there. So my assumption would be that the Oilers are getting into the second round. But I don't see them past the Leafs yet. I think the Leafs have the depth, and you still. The wild card in Toronto is Freddie Anderson. If he plays, I think that gives I do think that gives the Leafs the edge there or not. And I don't want to. I'm not a guy that's going to give Mike Smith a hell of a lot of credit, but he's done the job in Edmonton. But he hasn't I don't recall a game where he's stolen though. That's the one thing that you do need in playoff is you need your goaltender to steal you a game. Markstrom has stolen some games for Calgary. Campbell has probably stolen some games for Toronto. The other ones have. I just don't know if Mike Smith has stood up and said, if the Oilers can say, we won a game because of Mike Smith. Now, you can say that we've won a game because of Connor McDavid, and you probably will win or lose based on Connor McDavid, and maybe you don't need that stolen moment because of it, but I don't buy that you can't get through playoffs just with McDavid and Draisaitl scoring. And that's my other issue with the Oilers is their secondary scoring is next to nil. If you can minimize what McDavid and Draisaitl can do, I think you have a chance to beat them.
I'll give Puljujärvi some credit there in that discussion, but yeah, once you get into further down the list there, it's not nearly as much. But yeah, no, I don't. They'll find scoring. They'll find offense somehow. It comes down to being able to play with some really sound defensive structure and getting those big saves, like it often is for every team in the playoffs.
And if McDavid does do McDavid things at the beginning, how long is he going to be able to keep that up and keep that going? the playoffs is a different animal, and we know that it's called in a different way than the regular season. So McDavid has to stay healthy for them to have even a glimpse or a shot at even getting past the first round, even if they are playing a Winnipeg or a Montreal. Like it doesn't matter if he can't sustain it, then they're done.
You think Oilers fans are a little much with their ranting about the officiating and how all these little nicky like penalties that they want called against McDavid? They got one last night. That penalty on JT Miller was a soft call.
I would say they made like 3 or 4 soft ones of that sort throughout the game.
Yeah. You think they're getting that and that they're getting those penalties in the second round of the playoffs and on? No.
Yeah.
It gets so I said I think it's going to be very close, but like if all things are equal and like they both teams get into the second round, I think it's going to be very close between Toronto and Edmonton to see who makes it out of the North Division in the playoffs.
I got to say, as a neutral party, it's always a lot easier watching the playoffs than when you're invested in your own team. Like last year, that month with the Canucks, I mean, I was just fried emotionally by the end of it. But so it'll be nicer watching in that regard, but also going to be quite amusing the amount of tinfoiling over the officiating. That is going to be just wait and see. Just as Sean has alluded to here, might be the worst we've ever seen.
Because like as I said, that penalty that JT Miller like that led to, I think it was the third point for McDavid. That's not a penalty. That was literally Oilers management, players, and fans whining so much that the refs finally gave him a call. Because that play happens all the time.
I'm trying to see if I can pull that up as we're. Oh, that's the goal. Okay. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't find it. But the officiating was certainly interesting last night. I mean,
well, I don't think it was unfair. It was just really, it was pretty. It was on the marginal side for a lot of it.
I mean, if I was to wear a tinfoil hat, I would think the final hockey night in Canada on Saturday to get an opportunity to have a 100-point night for a player. I mean, but I don't wear a tinfoil hat, so I'm not saying, I don't wear a tinfoil hat. I'm not wearing one.
Yeah, those calls happen. Like I as much as I hate it, those calls happen, especially when teams and players whine enough. The league and officials sometimes end up paying attention to get 1 or 2 calls from it.
But one thing I will say, like I think that's going to be if it's Jets Oilers, and I'm kind of still on the assumption that we're going to get that. Chances are, Paul Maurice is fantastic with the media, and if it just becomes a situation where we need to have a commentary on the officiating, I would give Paul Maurice the edge over Dave Tippett on that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe some fines handed out.
Yeah.
And then, like, if we're talking officiating, like, one thing I wish that they would add to this offside review is if you find out that the player was offside but he was pushed offside, either that nullifies the offside or the player who there's an interference call, so you lose the goal but you're on the power play, because that's what happened with the Canucks goal that got called back.
Well, you're talking about fundamentally changing the offside rule, right? You can't put that into play only when the replay is in effect. You have to say, that's
I mean,
the rule.
yeah, you can have that, but at what point? How many times do we see like, they made that penalty call because it cost a goal?
Yeah,
it cost a scoring chance. Yeah. That cost them a scoring chance, so therefore should be a penalty, because you don't want to call back goals. And we talk about all this thing about the NHL finding ways to not suspend players. They also find ways to not count goals way too much. And when you've got legit interference that caused an offside that negated a goal, like I when I saw that play, I'm like, it's getting called back, even though
Yeah.
like because that's what the rules. I just think that once you reach that, you've pushed a player offside that's negated a goal. I think that takes it to another level where you have to make either negate the offside call, or you assess an interference penalty.
Well, how far are we willing to go back? Because that's just taking another step forward or another step back, and another incident that caused that to happen. So I understand where you're coming from, but then there's going to be so many asterisks to.
That's a difficult one for sure.
Yeah, there's going to be so much more that will be on the table within the offside rule, even though the offside rule is it's ridiculous how it all got started anyways, because of a Matt Duchene being egregiously offside.
Like what, 8 feet offside?
Yeah.
Like
I believe he was on top of the circles. Like
yeah.
So if that was going to happen, then it would open the book to anything and everything on the table, whatever they can see within that play or within the last 10 seconds of that play. And it just
I disagree, because you're looking at specifically the offside. If you're looking specifically at the offside play and you find that the player got pushed offside because of that, that should be part of the decision. Like I said, it should either negate the offside call because it's not the player's fault because he got pushed offside, or you hand out a penalty to the player who did the pushing, because I don't think that it's not within the spirit of the rule for what offside is.
I am not a fan of this rule. I just like there's a lot of times it's like an inch off that you can barely see it, or at the very least, it's not even ultimately a factor in the play. A lot of the times, I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, yeah, last night it wasn't. I'm trying to find the goal, but trying to find a play. But last night it certainly, I'll agree, it wasn't offside. But it's, I mean, I don't know. Like, if you're gonna, I see what Sean is saying here. That like, if you're gonna call why. I see that. I don't know.
I think the easiest solution there is what he suggested, and that is negate the offside. You're basically saying, well, the defending team they initiated that move, and therefore it's not offside. That kind of thing. Because then, if you're we don't need more interference penalties called. I think and I don't know if that's the right answer.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm trying to find the goal, but I can't read it at this particular point in time. So I'm overrun McLeaning this. So I'm
yeah.
Yeah.
See, at least they have the clips, Kevin. They just have to find them and get them queued up and rolled out onto the TV.
Yeah.
You're scratching and clawing trying to find it here.
Well, that should have been easier to find than I thought.
Yeah.
But anyway, I guess we kind of dug into the Leafs, but they clinched their first division title in over 20 years. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay this, Devin, but it's this division.
I'll downplay it. It's an asterisk.
Everything's an
playing
asterisk.
in a 7-team league. The CFL has 9. Let's not get too excited about the division title, although they've had a hell of a year.
But you can only play the games that you've played.
Yeah,
I'm on board with just saying whatever. It was the 2020-2021 season. Everything there is going to have a bit of a asterisk to it, but you can still, if your team won the division or ends up winning, that's the same thing. It's if you're putting an asterisk on the Leafs winning division, then McDavid's season needs an asterisk as well, because it's you didn't play every team in the league. I'm
sure that feeling's out there. And we discussed it earlier. It's not just the number of teams you're playing, but over 82 games as well. As Devin mentioned earlier, probably a little tougher to get 100 points in 53 games. But I mean, it's muddled. It's hard to really sort of just say, okay, well, this is where it's different, right?
Where I will give the Leafs credit is they do seem to have they have found some grit that they haven't had before, and I do think that will be beneficial in the playoffs. I think that, like, your Folignos, your depth pieces that you have there, I think is good. I think Alex Galchenyuk has been a nice, pleasant surprise acquisition that I think has helped out a lot. And I mean, I don't know if Pierre Engvall, you got Zach Hyman possibly coming back. The depth for Toronto is there. I mean, it's going to come down with like everything else in this division. It's going to come down to goaltending.
It definitely will. I just want to take a step back. Sorry, I didn't jump in when we were talking about the Leafs title, but the reason why it's such a big deal, Tyler, is because that's the last time they did it was 1999 to 2000 season, and before that, 1938.
Wow.
So there's some historic aspects to this, and yeah, there will be an asterisk beside it, and so what? You know, really, at the end of the day, are you going to negate Tampa Bay's win last year? No, you're not. They won the Stanley Cup, right? And that's the ultimate goal, and this is just a one stepping stone in that right direction.
That part of it. I mean, it's about getting that higher seeding, and that's good, and that good for the Leafs in that regard. I mean, but as far as divisions, I mean, we've never had a North division before.
No, we haven't,
yeah.
And then there's the whole thing. Okay, well, whoever comes out of the North, they didn't play every single team, but that's exact same with every other division, right? Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. But as far as
it's a level playing field. But as far as putting it, into historical context, it gets muddled there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, it really does come down to the goaltending. Is Jack Campbell going to be able to take them to the next level? I don't think Freddie Anderson is quite there yet. Yes, he's been down in the AHL getting a conditioning stint, and he's lost 2 games, but it's Kelly Rudy said it very well last night, and this is one of the few times that I'll actually give Kelly Rudy some credit here, is that if you can't trust the people or the skaters in front of you, then it's hard to really play the game that you normally are playing at the NHL level. So I don't know what effect that will have on Freddie Anderson's mental state, or how coming off injury and going straight into the playoffs is going to be, how it's going to affect him. So you will be in that Jack Campbell. You're not going to be trusting David Riddick. You're not going to be trusting Michael Hutchinson. So it will be on Jack Campbell's shoulders for the first little bit here to try and help the Leafs progress to the next round and win 4 games within the next 7 for the playoffs. So I'm happy with the depth, like Kevin was saying. The Simmons, the leadership of Spezza, Thornton, even Foligno, former captain. I just feel like they have a bunch of key pieces on that team that will help them in one way or another. To win a couple of rounds here. And for all I know, they could just be another Tampa Bay Lightning where they, win the division outright pretty much. And all of a sudden they get swept in the first round. Anything can happen within the playoffs. So, and that's why we love watching.
Yeah.
One other comment on the Leafs that I'm interested to see is when the intensity wraps up, are the best players still going to be able to be on their game? And I'm thinking specifically Marner, Matthews, Nylander. I'm not too concerned about John Tavares. I think with his experience, you're still going to get what you get out of John Tavares, and it's going to be pretty steady. But I think that's been an issue for the Leafs in past series against Boston, where they weren't bad, but those you lose the series and start thinking like it would have been nice to see a little bit more out of, say, William Nylander, right? So that'll be something I'm looking forward as well here.
Well, the way I look at it is the Leafs are better built for the playoffs than the Oilers are right now. Yeah. With the Simmons, with the Folignos, with the Engvalls, the Galchenyuks. They've got big bodies that can withstand the grueling nature of NHL playoffs. And if they play Winnipeg or Montreal in the first round, it's going to be a bit of a war, because Montreal's big and physical on the blue line and on the wings, as is Winnipeg. So it's going to be a big a battle for either of those teams. And for me, that's why I think I look at that and I think Toronto's built a little bit better for that, especially if Bogosian is fully is fully healthy at some point before during the playoffs.
Sorry for the sneeze, by the way.
Yeah, are you okay over there? You don't have a cough button there, buddy?
I forgot to hit the mute. I was looking. It came out. What was I supposed to do?
You were just in panic, full-blown panic mode there.
Gosh, not my best day. Yeah, and I also think too, just to the other thing that I think is interesting with the Leafs is I mean, whoever gets to the Final Four, I think the Leafs are more built for a Final Four than the Oilers are. I really do. I think that they are more prepared for whatever three American team come out. I think it's going to be really tough, but I think the Leafs are a bit more prepared than the Oilers are for that.
Well, and again with depth, right? Like it's inevitable. Some guys are going to go down on the route through the playoff field. So I think you have to like what Toronto has for secondary options there if they need to fill some holes in the lineup along the way.
Yeah. Sure. We have some breaking news. We have the tweet.
I'll pull that up right now.
Production values through the roof.
Oh, I know. I'm on the
shit.
ball today, aren't I?
We do the post-mortem on this one. That's
oh my God. Thank you for everyone to listen. And by the way, if you have questions or comments, please. This actually ran more smooth without me last week than it did with me this week. So, there we go. But we're starting to see that at the end of the year here, the coaching carousel is beginning, and Rick Tocchet has announced that, and the Coyotes have mutually agreed to part ways. I think for the Arizona Coyotes, this is a huge loss. For a few teams, including the one that is south to me over here, down the I-95, I think that if I'm Ron Francis, I might be rubbing my hands a little bit with Rick Tocchet, and they do have a history together. They played on the Stanley Cup winning teams in Pittsburgh together, so I would not be surprised if that name comes up. And then we had John Tortorella, of course. Him and Columbus have mutually agreed to part ways. And we have reports of an extension between Rod Brind'Amour and the Carolina Hurricanes to a possible 3-year extension at about, 3.2 total?
1.8 per season.
So to bring this home a little bit, we'll start to bring this home here. For Travis Green, what does this mean? We'll start with Sean on this.
I think the 1.8 is your bare minimum that he's going to get. I think he can get more. I think Tocchet. I honestly think not Tocchet. Brind'Amour. The biggest thing with Brind'Amour, from what I've heard, was that he was trying to make sure that his assistants got paid a decent amount as well, because Tom Dundon, the owner there in Carolina, has an idea that they shouldn't get paid as much as, say, others around the league. So I think from what I understand, that's been a big discussion point in there. So I wonder if there's if Brind'Amour took a little bit off to help them pay his assistants and go in there. But like I said, 1.8. The Canucks can get Travis Green signed to around $2 million. That's a good deal for them. But if not, I think there's still some coaches out there, but you're still going to have to pay. So if this was a power move by Aquilini to try and keep Green's salary down, like, who are you replacing him with if you lose this game of chicken? Because Tocchett's going to be the same, going to want the same. Gallant's going to want the same or more. Like, if you want someone who's got a bit of cachet, a bit of name power, you're going to have to pay. So at this point, I think it's the 1.8 million is a good sign for the Canucks, because I think there was worry that he might be looking for trying to reset the coaching market a little bit. But it looks, if they can get him around $2 million, I think it's a no-brainer.
To Rob Brind'Amour there as well, Sean, it's not just his assistants, it's the entire training staff, anybody who's in that realm. He wants extensions for them and want them to get paid fair as well.
With Travis Green, it's not just the money. I mean, I think it's going to be the overall satisfaction of ownership with everything, management, and then if we're changing management, do you let the new manager have a different coach? I mean, publicly, Francesco Aquilini is always behind Jim and Travis. He always mentions them by name on the Twitter, but we're just kind of guessing as to how satisfied they are with Travis Green's performance, never mind what it's going to cost to keep him.
From Travis's point of view, though, do you think that I'm not going to try. No, I'm going to ask this. What do you think of what percentage would you put of it's either I go or Jim goes?
I don't know.
I'm not too sure. I think before this season, they were pretty much. I felt that they were pretty much lock and step. But I think what happened this past off season with the way things fell out with Markstrom, Tanev, Toffoli, Levo, and everything that happened with that. Then you throw in the potential issues that we've heard about the players not being happy with the support and communication that came from management and the front office during the COVID break and COVID issues that they've had to handle. I think it's I wouldn't be surprised if there might be something there, but I think Travis is more concerned about just making sure that he's taken care of more than anything else at this point.
I mean, to go back to, we heard the comments from the team about management during the handling of the COVID situation, but you also heard after Thursday's game against Vancouver or against the Oilers, how happy they were with Travis Green. The players were. To me, that I'm fascinated by those comments. I mean, I don't like. I'm not saying maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I don't hear a lot of players saying, "Man, I really enjoyed that Jim Menning's GM," and I understand he's not with the team all the time, but there seems to be a number of players that are behind Travis Green, including Travis Hamonic, who's an unrestricted free agent. Who I think if I'm the Canucks, I definitely think you need to look at re-signing. And if that's a consideration, if you're keeping Travis Green, you have a chance to keep a Travis Hamonic. So I do think that there's some validity there in terms of Green's negotiation power at the very least.
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day they're going to get a deal done, but it's an uncomfortable spot to be in right now with all the different factors at play, and now that there's some more coaching vacancies out there for Travis Green to think about.
And not to mention what Michael DiPietro said about Ian Clark. He says he's the best goalie coach in the world. So to me, that has to play something quite significant in this. I mean, I'm not trying to stir up. I know that, the Canucks fan base can be known to stir up trouble sometimes, but I just wonder where this all is. I wonder where this Green Benning relationship is currently at this particular point.
Well, Green, Benning, and Aquilini, I think you have to throw him in there as well, because I do think that I honestly, the longer this goes without a Green signing on, as well as I think more importantly Ian Clark. The more I think there's going to be some major surgery to the coaching staff and front office in this offseason.
Yeah,
I honestly think that if there's any sort of truth to the players being upset with the management for how they handled this whole season, I think Aquilini has to make that tough choice, even though he doesn't want to. He has to move on and get a new GM in here and then you have to talk about what's going on with Travis Green, because I still think even no matter what happens, Travis Green wants to stay in Vancouver. It's he's from Castlegar. He's a BC boy. I think I think overall he's quite happy with where things are, with the team and everything. But I think there's some issues that I believe is holding things back, and it might be betting. It might be how he feels that the team's been managed, and the fact that the players aren't happy with it either. So I think there's something there. I do think there is something major is happening, whether it's them not re-signing Green, or moving on from Benning and Green, or they somehow bring Green back, but it's under the guys that they're bringing in the new GM, and the new GM has to take Travis Green as his head coach. I think something like that is happening this offseason.
Devin, did you have thoughts, or?
It's just a big cluster, really. It is, and it's absolutely unacceptable in my mind that Benning has let this go on so long. But once again, who knows what Aquilini is thinking? We know that Benning is an Aquilini guy, and that essentially is his puppet. In order for the way I see it, in order for the Vancouver Canucks to go forward, Aquilini needs to take a step back with his role and stop putting fingers and hands into the cookie jar. Because if you are going to trust your GM to do something, trust your GM to do something. This is all speculation, but everything kind of points in this direction. So in order for to have a successful franchise, that's what an owner needs to do. He needs to take a step back. And right now, who knows what is going on behind scenes, and we'll figure out what's going to happen in this offseason. But having a grade A coach in Green, and having a really arguably one of the best goalie coaches in hockey in limbo, it makes zero sense.
So let's just toss a scenario that Green leaves. Would you want Rick Tocchet in Vancouver?
I haven't put any thought into that, but
I wouldn't mind Rick Tocchet. I think he would bring a very. I think there is a discussion to have on whether or not the system that Travis Green is having this team play can work with this personnel. And this personnel, really, you're not going to get much different or better in the next year or two unless you've got major steps from your young players. So maybe if they do move on, I do think Rick Tocchet would be a good signing here with the Canucks. But again, you're still going to have Aquilini's still going to have to pay for him.
Yeah, probably more than he wants to.
Yeah.
Well, and there's also another possibility that there will be more coaches available. Look at the underachieving Philadelphia Flyers, Liam Vigneault. Is he on the hot seat? Who knows?
Bring AV back.
Yeah, or even Torts.
No, I want to see Torts in Seattle.
Or Mike Babcock. Who knows? God.
On that note, I'm just because we did talk about Davidson and Gordon leaving the Rangers. I'll ask all three, because both Vancouver and Calgary have not filled that president of hockey operations seat yet. In a pie in the sky world, I would be at 33% that Davidson lands in either markets. But would you want John Davidson to be the president of hockey operations?
I'd love it, because then you finally have someone who can basically be the in-between with Aquilini. I think you need that. You need someone to keep Aquilini at bay for as much as possible and let the GM run things. And I think that when Linden left and Benning had to do that, he's too susceptible to trying to do he's too susceptible to making poor choices based off of what the owner whim is at the time.
I mean, it'd be nice to have John Davidson, but it's not realistic. We've seen, Francesco Aquilini gave it a try with bringing in Trevor Linden, and I think a lot of that was about, rebuilding goodwill with the fans after a couple of bad seasons, and Mike Gillis getting fired. But it's pretty clear that the ownership wants to be fairly hands-on with how things are done, and to have that other, one more step in the chain of command interfering with that is not on with them, I don't think.
Not to mention with everything being so, like, with money being so tight, adding another person to your to your roster of that you have to pay, it doesn't make much sense to me for Vancouver. Now, Calgary is a bit of a different situation because they have had Brian Burke with and out hockey ops, and with that resume of Davidson, it'd be a nice little cherry on top of for the Calgary Flames. But who knows what he's going to want to do.
And who knows what the Flames I haven't heard any rumblings that they want to fill that role.
Yeah.
So I honestly think Davidson's going to be on TV for at least a season.
Yep.
And then going from there.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, for the Flames, they will absolutely need somebody in that organization to discuss the arena, because that is going to be a big issue within the next few months with this mayor election. There's a mayor election coming up in Calgary. Nenshi is not running the arena. I think the arena is going to be part of a lot of campaign conversations when you have COVID and who's paying for what. Davidson would be an absolute asset in that conversation. I just don't see it happening. I would love it, but I just don't see it happening. I think he's going to be on TV. I agree with Sean. Yeah. He's going to be on TV next year.
Well, and there's two networks, probably chasing after him, so he's in a good spot in terms of negotiating a good deal with one or the other.
There should be at least four, actually.
What do you mean? You think on this side of the border too? I think he's going somewhere to either Turner or ESPN. I don't see him working at a network up here, but he has before. He has worked for Hockey Night. But speaking of which, I could see Torts being a panelist for a while. He's done that before with TSN, and that'd be a way for him to stay to keep a profile. As he awaits another coaching opportunity. I don't think he wants to just retire at this point.
I'm not laughing at you. I just had an image of Torts and Bieksa on the same panel, and I'm just.
Well, we talked about TNT wanting to go a little more personality based. Doesn't Torts to TNT make so much sense?
Oh yeah.
Can you imagine him and Barkley?
Well, but Torts would be that crotchety type on the panel, right? And then you just find someone in there that's a little more positive about everything, and see how that works.
I just think
bring
more...
James Duthie down and have them do the quiz again.
Oh
yeah.
I think the more cameras that are on Torts, the better for hockey and for entertainment. It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But even like I said, if I'm Ron Francis, I'm looking at Tortorella as a potential coach for the Kraken. You have a bunch of misfit toys that got cast off from their NHL teams, and you've got Mr. Us Against the World coaching guy. That's what Torts does. When he's the best, when he's got something to rally everyone around and have us against the world. It's built in for him. He'd have players, if you draft in the expansion draft, you could have players running through walls for him, and the Kraken would be a very, very tough team to play against if you do it right.
To counteract that, though, I don't think that Rick Tocchet has been appreciated for the lack of talent in Arizona. I think it's a very similar situation with. There was Phil Kessel and there was Taylor Hall for a bit, and there hasn't been a lot of stars in Arizona. I mean, we haven't paid a lot of attention to Arizona, but I don't know. I would argue he's probably a better fit in Seattle than Torts is. He's already kind of done the island of misfit toys in the island of in a literal island of misfit in the National Hockey League. I would be more inclined to go talk it on if I was the Kraken, but
yeah, but Tortorella sells better.
I was going to say, yeah, I agree with you. Torts is more well known, but
and like you bring in a personality like that for your first season with the media and all that, it'd be hilarious. Like I'm not talking about like pure like hockey strategy at this point, Kev. I'm talking pure unadulterated entertainment, and Tortorella in Seattle, like it just would be awesome. It'd be great entertainment.
And now, if we are going to talk about X's and O's, I think Tortorella would be a better fit for those mid players because he runs 4 lines most of the nights, like in Columbus, and he doesn't care if you're a top player or not. Just ask Pierre Dubois. If you're not going to be playing, you're not going to be playing, and I think it'd be absolute gold for the Seattle Kraken to have him on as their head coach.
That might be the poll question. Who would you rather have? There we go. I
mean, if ownership there is in the mood to be splashy, then it makes some sense.
Well, the one thing I was thinking about is Seattle is not going to have the advantage in Vegas that players are going to want to play there. Not as like in terms of like taxes, it's not the same. Seattle, it's going to be a bit more. There's more taxes to pay in Seattle than there are in Vegas, so maybe you need a bit of more of a splash for that. But on the other side of this too, as I'm also thinking about this as we're doing this, if we're going back to the Pacific Division, if you're the Kraken, why are you not part of this wide open divisional playoff option? Like the Vegas did it, why can't Seattle do it? So,
absolutely, like you hit the nail right on the head. It's it makes total sense for them to do exactly what Vegas did or try to replicate it to a certain extent and be a playoff contender.
Yep. Anything else on that? Let's just quickly it's kind of the end of the pieces with the John Davidson firing, the Jeff Gordon firing, and the Tom Wilson, everything else that happened. The New York Rangers were fined $250,000 for their statement around George Peros. That angered a lot of people. Tom Wilson getting away with murder. From some people's perspective, the New York Rangers having to pay $250,000. I'll start with Tyler on this since we did at the beginning of this. Kind of your thoughts, and maybe we wrap a bow around this, or we put all this garbage in the garbage bag and we tie it up with a twist tie. I was going to say wrap a bow. This was not a present for anybody. Yeah,
I think it's just very simple. They threw out a big number like that to stop other teams from attempting something like that in the future. If you're a league, you can't tolerate this. I mean, the Rangers are right, I think, but as a league, you can't allow that to happen. You have to throw a pretty eye-popping number out there in the public to stop that from happening again. Other than that, I mean, we can go around in circles for hours about how many times more of a fine it is for speaking out than it was, with whatever Tom Wilson did. Sean's been over this many times that the collectively bargained agreement between the league and the players, forms a part of the disciplinary system. They made their ruling. The Rangers, they went a step further to try and make Tom Wilson and the Capitals answer for it, and it's time to move on from it. Honestly, I'm actually surprised that the fine wasn't bigger.
We're also talking about the difference between a collectively bargained fine for a player who made $4.1 million before all the deductions. There's a lot of deductions this year, and versus a $250,000 fine for a team and a owner who are worth a lot more. And I think people always, I think people forget about that when talking about this. But the key thing for me is more about the CBA and the collectively bargained fines system that they have. This, for me, the onus is on the PA to change this. The PA needs to start looking at this as protecting the victims of these dirty plays, as opposed to protecting the players who do the dirty plays. Like we don't want to, we want to rectify this, and I think it's time that they figure out a better way of doing this, because $5,000 for someone who makes over $4 million a year is chump change.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's nothing.
Well, the thing is, it's pretty clearly not about trying to put a dent in somebody's wallet. It's about the public attention that it receives, right? And so when you get into a six-figure fine, then obviously that opens a lot of eyes. But I'm, like I say, $250,000 wasn't very much. I mean, if you said $500,000 fine or a $1 million fine, boy, that's the last time anybody will ever do something like that. It's just that the number of zeros there just, has an impact just in terms of opinion and perception and a deterrent factor.
And this isn't the first time that ownership of the Rangers has had a scuffle or tiff with Gary Bettman in the NHL when they were trying to, back in the day, when they were trying to make all the NHL platforms on the internet all very similar, so that it's easy for us consumers to consume the content that's on there. They actually went to court because of it. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And Tyler's right, it's about the message on both ends. It's about the message of saying what we think Tom Wilson did is bullshit, and it's egregious that George Parros has, didn't suspend him for that, just gave him a $5,000 fine. And then on the opposite end, it's the NHL sending the message that can't happen publicly. So it makes sense on both ends, and I understand both sides of it for sure. I personally lean towards the New York Rangers and protecting their star players, because if the NHL is not going to be protecting them, then how else is that message going to be sent? And the players did their message by having a line brawl and having over 100 penalty minutes within that first period of the next game. And everybody's just sending messages, but who's going to listen is the question. I think that's what's being lost right now, is that who is going to listen. And you got to hope that the NHL is the one that takes the high road in listening and making sure that this won't happen again, because there's all this talk that, is this a black eye on the NHL? I don't think it is overall. If it happens more than once, okay, sure, yeah, then we can have that discussion. But right now, it's just deterring something like this that could have had a lot of potential backlash of Panarin, potentially getting more injured than he actually did. And he's a top 10 player within this league. So I think the parent company, the NHL, needs to take the higher road in that. Gary Bettman, he likes to strut his stuff and doesn't like being told or what to do or outed. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens going forward with all this stuff, and if there is another incident like this, how the NHL is going to be dealing with it.
There's some. I mean, it's the idea that it could have been worse is a hypothetical until we actually have a real situation of a melee and somebody's head getting split open and or heaven forbid something worse. Until it gets to that point, the league is not going to look at it like it's a black eye on their product at all. They're just not.
And yeah, you can say what if the play happened and it was an injury did occur all the time.
Yeah,
all the time you can look at that. But 90% of the time, the NHL is not going to look at it that way when deciding whether or not to discipline a player.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
Not permission. Well, which is completely fucking stupid. It is completely outrageous, and that's why they have the NHLPA, to kind of help mitigate these not this one specifically, but give a voice to the players, because the players are the ones who are putting their career and life on the line, and this isn't life and death situation for sure, but it's just super sad. And I think that's where people's voices are wanting to be heard because of the what ifs. I don't know. It just doesn't make much sense to me. You want to be ahead of the game, not reactionary, in my mind.
And the NHL has struggled with proactivity for sure.
And again, it comes back. Some of that comes back to the PA as well, Dev. You brought up that they need to be protecting the players. Yeah, but they need to be protecting the players who are getting injured or potentially injured because of all these dangerous plays, not the player who made the dangerous play, made the play that potentially could injure someone. Mm-hmm. If they are actually trying to mitigate the risk and actually try and change some attitudes and mindsets of people and players, they need to start looking at making the disciplines a lot more punitive, because right now you just talked about how the fines are just there for a message. What is does $5,000 actually send a message, or $1,000 actually send a message to these players?
No,
not really. It's you can yell and scream and ask for or demand that George Parros get fired and replaced with someone else, but until you fix the behind the scenes issues with the collectively bargained side of all that, and the PA protecting the aggressor, the players who did the act, as opposed to the players who were on the receiving end of it, nothing's going to change. This is a much bigger issue than just George Parros at the helm of Department of Player Safety.
Well, and specifically from the PA side of it, the attitude has to be about, one, safety, two, impact on salary, and it doesn't seem to be that way. Suspensions mean forfeited salary, fines, or just not as much you're forfeiting, but it's still a financial impact to their members. So the attitude there is still, how can we have a system in place where there is discipline to try and keep things safe for our members, but at the end of the day, they also want to make sure that that their members are not sacrificing salary to over things that they think are not that big a deal in a lot of cases.
And I just want to state I don't know if I was being very clear, but I'm pro safety as far as players go. And it's not me being on one side of the NHLPA or being on the NHL. Safety in general needs to be at the forefront, period, and stop. And both those sides need to, stop playing this, excuse my analogy, but a dick measuring contest. It drives me insane whenever it comes down to something like that. So the safety of the players need to be at the forefront.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a long, I don't think that this conversation will solve it. I think the more I come down with this, that everybody involved, Wilson was wrong. I don't think Artemi Panarin is necessary in this and bystander in this either. He jumped Tom Wilson, Kevin Bieksa, whether you like what he said or not last night. And I generally disagreed with what he said, that it wasn't a suspension. He did point out that Panarin jumped Tom Wilson last night, that it was not part of the discussion. So he's not innocent in this. The Rangers are absolutely not innocent in this. I personally disagree with naming. I don't think you do that. I think that that's absolutely unprofessional. In my mind, I agree with what General Botterill had to say last night. I mean, this is about ultimately growing the game, but I do think, ultimately this is not going to be a situation that's going to be solved today.
Just on growing the game, if they wanted to grow discussion around hockey with casual watchers, that mission accomplished there last week. Has there been more discussion about what's going on in the NHL in the United States at any point prior to that this season? I don't have polling to know that, but I suspect that it's been not a lot of talk about the NHL in the States here this year, and that got everybody talking about it again.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just gonna. I know we want to move on here, but the whole Panarin thing that he's not at fault either. Come on, like you're just gonna watch that your the person or your teammate, your family is being beat up, and you're just gonna stand by, and be like, nope, sorry, not gonna.
That's not what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying.
No, I know that's not what you're saying, but that's what the census of what Bieksa and I guess Brad May, what they were saying about it is. It's just like it comes down to the fact of the bigger man in Tom Wilson understanding that who he's not the player, but that it's not going to be a David versus Goliath thing. Panarin's not going to win that fight ever. So it's up to Tom Wilson to make sure that he does not go above and beyond ragdolling him and throwing him down to the ice. It's about him being like, okay, this is a smaller player, no matter who it is, and I'm not going to subject myself to that to make sure that he is going to, remember this, right? And once again, it's about player safety. It's about respecting the other fucking team.
I see both. I hear what you're saying. I'm not saying that he should have. Maybe he pulls him back. I mean, I wasn't in the scrum. That's the other part of it. So I can't comment from that perspective. But hey, listen. I know that people, there were a lot of people very angry at Kevin Bieksa last night. I disagreed with him, but kudos for him for standing for his position. Mm-hmm. And I thought he, as much as you may have I disagreed with it, he articulated his position very well, and that was one of the better segments of Hockey Night in Canada intermission this year. It was great to hear Bieksa and Jennifer Botterill at least have a debate about this and go back and forth. I actually enjoyed that.
And a genuine debate too, not one that was kind of pre-drawn up and contrived, right? You could tell that was a genuinely passionate discussion about a controversial topic.
Yeah, I recognize the look in Jennifer Botterill's eyes when Bieksa was talking, because I've seen it in Devin's eyes, I've seen it in my eyes when someone said something that we disagree with. There's the.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah.
And then they're shuffling of papers, going like, I don't know what to do because I'm angry. Fuck.
Yeah, well, for me, it's just like, oh, not this again.
but I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of this whole thing. And I the more I think about it, the more I know I'm going to get heat for this, but the more I lean towards where Bieksa is in terms of the way they've disciplined things. It's not a suspension. I think there should be something for it, because Tom Wilson's the bigger man. He should have seen who he was wrestling with and done the best to mitigate the issue afterwards. Mm-hmm. He didn't. He lost his head. So if Panarin jumped in and they scuffled, and then even if he did that judo throw, just because, and then he realized it was Panarin and stopped, I think I'd feel, and it didn't do all that stupid business in the penalty box. I feel like it wouldn't have taken off nearly as much. It still would have because the punch to Buchnevich was bad, the toss was bad, but it was a little bit of everything. It was he continued to ragdoll Panarin and face wash him while he was on the ice. Then he did all that clowning in the penalty box, and it just it was the combination of everything. And then you throw on top of it, it's Tom Wilson, who has a history of absolutely brutal decisions that have hurt players in the past.
Yeah. We'll get to what I wish got more attention in hockey a little bit later. But just to quickly touch on, we have an hour and 14 minutes in. And by the way, I don't know what time the swear happened. I missed entirely that. But we haven't given up.
I've given up.
We haven't talked about the Canucks or the Flames. I also got to point out the comment we got here, by the way. the coaching, back to the coaching thing. Maurice on the hot seat there from Pal Parallax Prophecy.
Yeah.
The Canucks, Jack Rathbone played, Cole Lind played, Tyler Grayovac played. The kids are playing now. Just quickly, we'll just touch on that. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, Cole Lind is looking like someone who's probably going to need a few more at least a season to get his feet underneath him. I think this season shows what he needs to work on. Rathbone looks like a player. Like, he's got the skating, he's got the shot, he's got the mindset. I think he is the next left shot defenseman that the Canucks are going to have to find a spot for next year. Now that just you have to look at how do the Canucks build their blue line next year? Do you go sort of more young and inexperienced on the left side and veterans on the right, or do you find a way to rotate Rathbone and Juolevi next year and bring back Alex Edler or move Schmidt to the left side to add some veteran experience on that left side. So, but the emergence of what you can see what Rathbone is, that Rathbone is a player and someone that should be on this team at least part-time, if not full-time, next season.
Yeah, he just seems to have that confidence in his play right away here. I'm very interested to know what happens with Alex Edler if he comes back. I suspect he will come back. Of course, at what price is always the big question, but I think he'll be back. So, yeah, hey, it's not a bad thing having some options back there. You can never have enough defense.
Yeah. And with the Flames, it looks like, according to Ryan Pike anyway, it looks like tonight might be the last start for Markstrom. It looks like they're going to start splitting between Domingue and Zagadulin. And it looks like we're going to start seeing the kids. We might see some Connor Mackey. We might see some Glenn Godden. Maybe some Matthew Phillips. Who knows? But Devin, just kind of what are you hoping to see from the Flames for the final 5 games here?
Yeah,
that they're going to be played, by the way.
Yes. They just to play the kids, see what you have there. Have them up at a NHL speed if they can think fast enough. Adam Zizka is another guy that he has very much emerged as a potential, not a front runner to make the team next year. Who knows what this team's going to look like anyway. So, and where they are going to be, if it's a retool, rebuild, whatever saying you want to put it into. But Adam Ruzicka is definitely going to be one that I will be watching. Hope that they do bring up, because to what Sean said, the entire year is at the right side. It hasn't had there's not enough right side, right wing players on this roster. So and Adam Ruzicka is one that is a right winger, and he's big. He's not as fast, but he does think at an elite level. So I'd be really excited to see him. Glenn Godden as well. He was on a power play unit for practice, so I would be expecting him to kind of flourish and shine a little bit here near the end of the year. I would love to see more Zagadulin in net than Louis Domingue, so you can understand what you have there with the depth in playing, NHL caliber team. It is against the Canucks, but at least you can see what you have going forward.
I'll be surprised if this is the last time we see Markstrom. I think they'll probably still play him at least one or two more games, but I think they'll mix those other 2 goalies in as well. If they do shut him down, that's very interesting, because I think Markstrom's a guy who wants to play. He's a guy who doesn't like sitting, so he'll have to be fully on board for that to happen. Which is why I don't think it's happening. I think he's going to play at least 1 or 2 more of those games, the remaining games that they've got left. But Devin's right, and Ruzicka is someone that they definitely need to see what they have in. He put up a decent amount of points this year with the Heat, 21 points in 28 games. So if they can if the right side, so they can fill a right winger spot internally for next season, that's a huge win for the Flames.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know what they're going. I mean, the other thing I was just thinking too is you do have the World Championships coming up. I'm not saying that there's going to be a lot of players going. I'm that's going to be a fascinating situation. That I think there's going to be more layers to that conversation. We won't get into it this week. We'll probably next week, but that's going to be a fascinating conversation because, and then you also have the one other bone in here too that is a thing, legitimately, is the Olympics. So that's another thing as well. We'll deal with that a little bit more next week. But I wanted to also kind of two things. I just also want back to the Canucks quickly with the AHL affiliate. I didn't get a chance to put my 2 cents in it. I just quickly wanted to do that. I think from a strategic standpoint for the Canucks to have it in Abbotsford, obviously a no-brainer. Very that's smart. What I hope happens is that they develop some sort of partnership with the Vancouver Giants, with the BCHL, and that everyone there, that there can be a win-win situation here. And it becomes a bit tougher now because the Vancouver Giants went a whole year without fans. And by the way, congratulations to the Kamloops Blazers for clinching the BC division. But to help junior hockey, it is going to be a bite. But I think that I hope that there's a way that there can be a partnership that's win-win for everyone else. Sportsnet, I don't think is going to be able to carry all three. They're not going to be able to carry the Canucks, Abbotsford, and the Giants, whatever the Abbotsford nickname is. So that, I think, that's where I'm a little from a junior hockey perspective. I am a little concerned, but I do see that there's a possibility of partnership there as well.
Is there not an Abbotsford-based, I think it's a music station, but CHLY, I think is the call letters. Is there not an Abbotsford-based station that they'd maybe want to have their games on?
That's what I read an article saying they're looking at that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think they are going to have. It won't be 650 that carries it for sure. No. They're going to get a local Abbotsford station to do that.
And just kind of blends quickly to the Flames, the blow up part, and to blend this with the U18s. I don't know if anyone had a chance to watch that game.
No.
It was
a good game.
It was, yeah. I chose that one over the Vancouver Oilers games, which, well, I didn't choose that. I partially chose it.
Yeah.
But growing the game, wishing that I really wish that there were some more eyes on that. There's so much talent on both sides. I mean, for the Russians, you got Nikita Chibarov, Matvei Michkov, who's in Connor Bedard's draft class. That guy is sensational. Shane Wright, Connor Bedard. I mean, what more can you say about them? I mean, there was so much. Except Brendan Othman for this year's draft. He's going to be a beast. Mason McTavish. Brant Clark, there's just a lot of talent that I just wish there was more eyes on. And from the Flames and even the Canucks perspective, it's going to be, I just think it's interesting to see what you do here in terms of draft, because I'm not saying you should tank. I'm not pro tank, but you sure the heck want to have some opportunities to get your hands on a Shane Wright or a Connor Bedard. The more opportunities that you have to take a crack at those guys, that would be smart. Even a Michkov too.
I hate talking about setting yourself up to lose so you can get a player.
I'm not saying set up to lose, because that's not what I don't think that you have to do that. but there may be
with the new rules where it's only 2 lotteries and you can only move up a certain amount. You basically have to,
unless you make some moves.
Well, I think last
night.
What
what moves are you making? Sorry, Tyler, but I just don't understand what moves can you make to put yourself in that position. What team is trading away a first-round pick that could potentially be Shane Wright, Connor Bedard, or Matvei Michkov? Who in their right mind is trading those first-round picks that could be lottery picks? I mean, Brad Treliving could trade it away. He's done it before, but sorry. Sorry. But honestly, I think he's learned. I think he's learned his lesson. He's not going to do that. But who would do that 2 years out when you have no idea there's still so much uncertainty. Like, I can understand teams maybe wanting to move on from their first round picks this year because the draft is so up in the air because you don't know as much about these players, and it's a very close draft particularly. So there's not necessarily the top end, the Patrick Kanes, the Ovechkins, Crosbys, McDavids, Matthews. They don't have this draft class doesn't have a bona fide number 1 franchise player. They've got some really good players who are going to step in and be very good NHLers, but they don't have that. So maybe you're going to be able to get some extra late first round picks this year, but I don't think there's any team that's going to be willing to trade away a pick that would be realistically in the running for Shane Wright or Connor Bedard.
Look, I think from both the Canucks and Flames perspective, and we saw it with the Canucks last night. I mean, you all you can really do is just play a bunch of younger players. If you're somebody that has an eye on the lottery right now, I mean, last night was kind of the ideal outcome, wasn't it? It was a competitive game. They lost in regulation. They didn't gain any points in the standings, and I'm not saying let's go the tank route. It should be about looking towards next year, though, and they're doing that by getting some younger guys in there. I mean, we were talking earlier about paying the coach. I mean, Louis Eriksson, does he even exist anymore? Like, he's, there's not even. I don't even think they're thinking about putting him in anymore. They're really that moved on from it now.
I think what Kevin's trying to get at there, Sean, is that if it lines up, you're not going to try and tank. But if it lines up with what your organization is doing, then you kind of sell off your good players, and you still need an NHL team to really to play. It doesn't mean that you're going to be 100% going to get a Connor McDavid or a Jack Eichel esque player. But God, I can't stand that little dig about Tree Living Man, because at that point in time, hindsight's 20/20, but at that point in time, Calgary was a Travis Hamonic away from, if they played as well as they did, they were a Travis Hamonic away from potentially getting to where they wanted to be. So I just have a hard time with that dig. But to tank for the sake of tanking, no. But if it lines up with what you're trying to do long term, then there's that potential.
I mean, there are some really good players in this draft. I'm not saying that there's not, but if you're in a lottery situation, if you're a lottery team and you think that you're going to be a lottery team next year and you have an opportunity to make a trade with a lottery team next year, maybe you look at finding a way to do it. It seems to me that Detroit is certainly setting themselves up for to select a Shane Wright or a Connor Bedard within the next couple of years. I mean, I'm not saying they're tanking, but they're certainly setting up like that. I guess to me, just like what my thought is how do you build around it? Like, the next 3 drafts are fascinating is my entire point. There's some really good players in this draft. There's some really good players in next year's draft. And there's already some exciting, and we don't even know what happens in 2 years, but it is fast. The next 3 years of drafting is going to be fascinating.
It is. Dev, I apologize for that dig. It was It was a low blow.
Don't be sorry about that. It show's way more fun when you start firing low blows.
But I just where Detroit is versus where the Flames are and versus where the Canucks are, completely different. Completely different. Like the Canucks already have their franchise center. They already have their franchise defenseman that they're trying to build around. They're trying to build that. So if things work out right and they do they can add, say, a Brandt Clark this year, and then say they don't, they're in the lottery again next year and they get Shane Wright, great. But I don't think it's necessarily something that the Canucks should be looking at, quote unquote setting themselves up for, because you want to be able to build the team. Right now, Detroit doesn't have the team to build and grow around just yet. They've got a bunch of young prospects, but most of them haven't played a single game in the NHL or haven't played a full season.
I feel like Devin has a response.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Now, if the
cooler heads
for the Flames. Sorry, Dev.
Nope, I'm good. Go for it.
For the Flames, if they do decide to quote unquote blow it up and move out like Gaudreau or Monahan, something like that, then and you get a first round pick that could potentially be that'd be great for them, and that would be something that I think they should do, depending on what other pieces are coming back, because there's still no guarantee that whoever picks up Gaudreau or Monahan doesn't end up just being a playoff team, and guess what? That pick's no longer a lottery pick. So I know there's too much uncertainty. So when I hear that, it only works for certain like setups and teams. Ottawa is a team that I think is just outside that. That looks like they're starting to build something. Do you really if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, do you think that they should tank again, play not try and build off of the end of the season and see if they can make the playoffs next year in the back in the old divisions? Mm-hmm. Or do you want them to tank so they can get maybe Shane Wright again? Right? I think it's just Detroit is such a different situation where all their young players have not played a full season. Like what they got, Moritz Seider, who didn't even play in the NHL this year. They brought Lucas Raymond over. They've got they do have Dylan Larkin, Tyler Bertuzzi, and they just traded Anthony Mantha away. But they're in full rebuild right now. They're 2-3 years away from even bringing in all the players and starting to develop the team and the core and growing from there.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just thinking if there is a creative way to not necessarily have to blow everything up, and I actually don't think the Flames should be blowing up anything. A major retool, absolutely. Blow up to no, I don't believe that. But just from what I've seen from Shane Wright and Connor Bedard so far, those would be guys I would love to have on my hockey team, and I would be. I am if I was a fantasy GM, I would be strategizing ways to give myself more opportunities to get those draft lottery balls in my pocket to have a better chance at them than I would. That's what I think, and I don't know if I have to tank to do it, but I would love to get my hands on them because they are two incredible players. Am I making sense, Devin?
You definitely are.
I just don't see if they're that good, who's giving who would trade away the opportunity to get them without getting a ridiculous deal like a pile back. That's where I think it could be.
It could be a team like Nashville that they think that they're on the precipice of something great, and then all of a sudden they tank. And they go away. They have draft picks that they didn't think was going to be a part of that because of where their trajectory, right? And like there are a handful of teams out there that could potentially have that happen to them. So it's just striking gold is what Kevin's talking about. And if you can't strike gold or try to, why not? And once again, it's not about, I think Vancouver and Calgary are completely different situations. Vancouver, I don't see that happening. Calgary, I could potentially see that happening depending on where management thinks this team is going to be within the next 2, even 5 years.
It's going back to the Pittsburgh model. You're trying to win a lottery.
Yeah,
is literally what it is, what you're trying to do. When that, yes, you should go out and try and find it. If these players are as good as a lot of people are saying, and I don't doubt that. I've seen some of the highlights that they have. I love the way both of them skate. I think they skate at a level that's going to be a better than majority of the NHLers right now, honestly. And they think the way this next generation of players have grown up from Timbits hockey to junior hockey to the NHL, playing under these new rules and learning how to be creative in them. And I think the next generation is going to be fun. I agree with you, Kev. Fun to watch. But I said it's going to be very, very tough to pry any sort of potential lottery pick away from teams when the prizes are complete franchise level forwards.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I just I did a recap with Stephen Ellis from the Hockey News. I also did an interview with Peter Labardius that I'm going to be writing that article after we're done this. So that will be out hopefully early this week. This week?
upcoming week, yeah.
So that will be that, and then we'll there. Anything else we need to speak about?
No, I think we're all good there, Kev.
All right. How do we follow everyone?
I am Beardy Canuck 03 on Twitter.
Someone better be taking
Yeah. I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
I'm on Twitter at Gordhouse09.
KEVOLE, Schneids, SCHNEIDZI. I am KEVOLE. Podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast. The audio will be up shortly, and we will be back on Wednesday discussing whatever else has happened, which is lots, and the playoffs are coming soon, so we've got that to look forward to. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.